Hello everyone, my name is Gemma Aiolfi. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this important milestone event for the Ethics and Reputation Society. May I first of all congratulate you all on the commitment and engagement you all bring to addressing integrity and corruption-related challenges. I've been asked to talk about examples of anti-corruption collective action initiatives from around the world. But before doing so, I just wanted to mention 4 developments that are incentivizing companies to engage in anti-corruption collective action. The first is the revised OECD recommendation published by the member countries of the Anti-Bribery Convention at the end of 2021. Among the new measures to reinforce efforts to prevent, detect, and investigate foreign bribery, collective action is included for the very first time. Member countries have to really engage. They must, and I quote, consider fostering, facilitating, engaging or participating in anti-bribery collective action initiatives with private and public sector representatives, as well as civil society organizations aiming to address foreign bribery and bribe solicitation, end of quote. This recommendation will be part of the country monitoring process that members of the OECD Convention undergo on an ongoing basis. So there are 44 member countries, including Turkey, of course. And quite simply, this means that governments will be asked to explain what have they done to foster, facilitate, engage, or participate in collective action with civil society and companies. So now we have an international standard that is encouraging the public and private sectors to really get active and participate in collective action. Secondly, there's a rapidly growing interest in corporate non-financial reporting, where companies explain how they address environmental, social, and governance issues. The largest organization that publishes such information is the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI. GRI's reporting standard on anti-corruption asks companies to describe whether they participate in collective action to combat corruption, including the company's strategy, a list of the initiatives in which they participate, and a description of the main commitments. So these are also pushing companies to think about how they can engage. What we're also seeing is an increasing recognition in the convergences or even overlaps between how companies are addressing human rights and corruption. These topics have much in common and are linked, but they're also have important differences. Using collective action to share knowledge and experiences is a practical approach that some companies are already using given the new laws on human rights, as a way of keeping up with these new developments and sharing good practices. Fourthly, the last thing I just wanted to mention that's having a real impact on the dynamism of collective action is the network of corruption prevention agencies. This brings together government organizations from all over the world, many of which are responsible for drafting their national anti-corruption strategies. These strategies usually call on the private sector to prevent corruption. What we're finding is this network is now exchanging on their experiences and their different ideas on how to engage with the private sector, including through collective action. So these are some of the developments that are mainstreaming collective action to fight corruption. But let's look at a couple of the inspiring examples that we have been part of or witnessing over the last year or two. First of all, there's a question that is often asked by investors and boards. How can you measure whether an anti-corruption compliance program is really effective? What impact is it having? This was a question that was posed by one of the world's largest investors, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund manager, to a group of pharmaceutical companies. Together, the companies formed a collective action to agree on key performance indicators to identify what an effective anti-corruption program means in practice. The output was a set of indicators that are publicly available for companies to report on publicly. So far, 2 companies from the 8 that participated in the collective action have published such information about the quantitative and qualitative indicators of the effectiveness of their anti-corruption compliance programs. The second of these companies has also, Novartis, the pharmaceutical company, has also indicated where there are gaps and where they're still having to work to develop indicators. So this is probably the start of a discussion to identify more key performance indicators about what is effective. And this is an important discussion for many companies internally as well as externally. So this is an example of how collective action can break new ground. And it was the first, I think, to be inspired by an investor and also to address an area that is useful to companies. And I hope it may inspire other industry sectors to develop improvements to these basic indicators. As I say, this is a public document, and more inputs and more discussion around this would be very welcome. The second example I wanted to highlight is the joint project of two major global collective action initiatives. One is open ownership, and the other is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Together, they're partnering to develop and deliver a new global program called Opening Extractives. It aims to stimulate a real transformation in beneficial ownership transparency in the extractives industry. This will involve governments, companies, and civil society publicly revealing the ultimate beneficial owners of their supply chain companies and partners of the companies that engage in mineral and mining industries. This collective action could be a game changer in a sector that has long been associated with corruption risks, including kleptocracy and state capture. And I think it's an exciting development because it brings together two really well-established collective action initiatives to tackle a really complex and political issue. So we'll be interested to see how it develops. Another initiative I'd like to mention is Compliance Without Borders. This is a mentoring program, and it's between state-owned enterprises and the private sector. And it arose out of discussions at the B20 and the OECD. It's been piloted in the last few months and could be a great way for state-owned enterprises to benefit from experienced compliance officers who are located in the private sector, sharing their experiences and expertise, and it's for free. So these are volunteers from the private sector who are often busy compliance officers, offering their time and knowledge to the state-owned enterprise. At the same time, the private sector compliance officers learn about the challenges of having to implement a compliance program in a state-owned organization, which often has very specific challenges. So Compliance Without Borders is an interesting and new collective action initiative. I wanted to mention another non-governmental organization called the Natural Resource Governance Institute, which really focuses on, as the name suggests, the oil and gas industry. Over the last 2 years, the Natural Resource Governance Institute conducted a detailed review and analysis of corruption cases involving state-owned enterprises and their oil and gas corporate partners in the private sector to identify the key recurrent corruption issues. They also reviewed existing best practices on corruption prevention. Then they brought together, in a series of consultations, 15 of the largest oil companies. They spoke to state-owned enterprises and civil society stakeholders. The aim of this action was to develop a new and tailored set of guidance that recommends measures that companies in the sector can adopt to reduce corruption risks in their work when partnering with state-owned enterprises. The guidance that was issued a couple of days ago also recommends measures that state-owned enterprises can take to strengthen their anti-corruption safeguards. They interviewed about 110 individuals, spoke to 50 companies, NGOs, financial institutions, universities, and developed a core group of 18 companies that could speak under Chatham House rules and under a closed-door workshop network. The guidance that they've developed breaks new ground for 3 reasons. First of all, because it really focuses on the business interactions between companies and state-owned enterprises. It has a mix of basic and ambitious measures. Some can be implemented already and others will take longer. And thirdly, and this is really interesting, I think, it prioritizes the public interest in the producing countries rather than the company's interests, which is usually the focus of compliance guidance. This means higher disclosure levels, even if the entities are not legally obliged to do such reporting. They hope that it will make a contribution to stopping serious forms of corruption like kleptocracy that has long been associated with this sector. This guidance could really provide inspiration to other countries because there are state-owned enterprises everywhere in the world, and many present similar risks as this industry sector, the minerals and mining sector. So the collective action methodology that the Natural Resource Governance Institute developed could be applied in other sectors, in other countries, and to other corruption-related challenges. So here are some of the examples from around the world that provide inspiration, I think, and examples that others can follow. And if you have any questions about collective action or want more details on any of these initiatives, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the Basel Institute or with colleagues at the Ethics and Reputation Society who will be glad to help. Thank you very much and good luck with your event today.